What is up? In this video, I'm going to teach you how to write an amazing melody using only the chord progression you already have in your song or music production. Coming up. Welcome back. My name is Jack. Thanks for tuning into the video. If you've been here before, thank you for your continued support. If you're new, welcome. It's my goal to help creative music makers make better music at home. You heard it. This video is all about writing amazing melodies using the chord progression you already have in your song or music production. Now, if you don't have a chord progression yet, don't turn off this video because I have a quick and simple way that you can find a chord progression online and use that in your songs. It's actually a great way to break writer's block if you're not sure what to write or where to start. But I get it, you know, writing melodies can be a topic that is really intimidating for a lot of beginning musicians and music producers. But that's why I wanted to make this video. My goal was to demystify melody writing a little bit so that you all could be making better music using the setups you already have. Enough of me talking, let's get into Live Lite and make a melody. All right, here we are inside of Ableton Live Lite. You can see the version that I'm using. It is Live Lite 10. And before I started this video, I did a couple of things. So the first thing I did was I found a decent drum beat that I'm going to be using as the background and the basis for the video. You could use anything for this. If you have a song that's already in development, I would use that. But for the sake of this tutorial, I just found a nice little drum groove. Now, I also created a track for the chord part, and I'm going to use Ableton's electric instrument. And this is a really great electric piano. I like it a lot, and I recommend it. So what I did was I went ahead and created a little chord progression. Now, I've been playing piano for a while, so it wasn't too hard to plunk that out on my MIDI controller. But if you're not used to chords and chord progressions and playing piano, what I recommend is checking out this little document right here. You can even print it out if you want to, but this is a really great resource showing some common chord progressions in common keys, as well as the chords needed to play those chord progressions. So if you don't have one yet, or you're just starting a new project, what I would recommend is picking one of the chord progressions from this sheet and going off of that. It'll be a great exercise in writing and making a melody. Now here is the chord progression that I used. It's in the key of A minor, which is all the white keys. There aren't any sharps or flats. It's the relative minor of C major. And all that means is that all the notes in C major are also in A minor, and they have the same key signature. Now, if you don't know all the theory stuff, that's totally okay. You don't need to worry about that for this video, but I do want you just to see what I'm using in case it's helpful for you. So I've got A minor into F major, into G major, into E minor, into F major. And if you like the number method, I did put the numbers below, as well as the Roman numerals. And what that is that's based off of the scale degrees or the order of the notes played in the key of A minor. Again, if you don't want to get into the theory stuff, you don't need to know it, so don't worry too much about it. But it's there. Now, real quick, I wanted to take a second to do a really special shout out to Sarah for winning the audio interface in my last week's giveaway. Now, Sarah and I were able to connect on Instagram. We chatted it up for a little bit, but she is super excited and grateful to have won the audio interface. She said that she started learning Ableton for school and never thought she'd win something like this or this would happen to her. So she's super grateful, and I'm super glad that the interface is going to be going to a good home where someone will be using it and appreciating it. So big congrats again to Sarah. I hope you'll let me know how you like the interface. All right, so let's hear how our chords sound with our drums. All right, I really like the sound. I was kind of going for an 80s vibe with it. I heard that drum beat and I was like, all right, we can do this. So I'm actually going to give you a freebie before we get into the melody writing, and I'm going to make a bass part for this really quick. And it's even quicker than making a melody. I'll show you how to do it. But what you want to do is create, obviously, a track for the bass. I'm using Ableton's analog device. It's Ableton's subtractive synthesizer. It's included with Live Lite, and I use it a lot. It's really awesome. But what you're going to want to do is copy the clip from your chords directly as it is and drop it into your bass track. And there's a couple ways to do this. You can go Command C and then Command V to copy and paste, or you can right click, copy and paste, or you can hit Command D to duplicate and then drag one down. But regardless, however your DAW does it, just make sure you copy that down from the melody directly to the bass. Once you have it copied, you're going to want to double click to open it up. And from there, I recommend selecting all of the notes that are not the root note or the lowest note. All right, so once you do that, you're just going to delete them, deactivate them, whatever you want to do, but you don't need those in this clip. The next thing you want to do is you want to select all the remaining notes and drop them down about 2 octaves. Now this depends on how low your original chords already were, but for mine it needs to be about 2 octaves. So it's at A2. I'm either going to select them all and drag it down manually to A0, or on Ableton you can actually hold Shift and hit the down arrow twice to drop it down 2 octaves. Now that I have that, what I want to do is I want to change the rhythm of the bass notes themselves. So I'm actually going to hit B to enable draw mode. I have the fixed grid. Let's set it to 1/8 note. And all I'm going to do is redraw in these notes at an 1/8 note repeating. All right, and that's going to give us a really great rhythmic 1/8 note pattern. Let's hear our track so far. Awesome, I'm really digging that. So now on to the meat and potatoes, on to our melody. We're going to repeat the first step that we did for the bass, and we're going to copy and paste that chord MIDI clip down to the melody track. Now for the melody, I'm going to be using Operator. It's another fantastic synthesizer included in Lite. And I gotta say, I tell this to all my music production students, but Ableton is amazing because it includes a fantastic set of built-in instruments. You know, something like Pro Tools, you really have to buy a lot of third-party plugins and rely on those. But even in Ableton's budget version of their software, Lite, which we're using today, there are plenty of instruments, plenty of effects, and even samples and sounds just to get you started making music. So I really do recommend it. So here we are with our chords that we've copied onto our melody track. Listen closely because this is where it gets a little bit detailed, but it is still pretty simple. The first thing you want to do is all of these rhythmic variations. We want to get rid of those. We basically want to simplify this into blocks as much as we can. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So for example, all the breaks in these notes, I don't want that. I'm just going to drag them out individually to each chord. Now I did a little sustained 4 thing here, so I'm going to leave that and treat it as a separate chord. If you just have a 4-chord progression, that is totally fine. Don't worry about it. This is just going to add for a little bit more variation, but it's not a huge deal. All right, so once you've done that, this is what you're going to be looking at. So basically, you want all of your different chords to be their own little grouping or section. And what I did was I dragged out all the notes to perfectly fill the space of each chord. Now that's important, and I'll show you why. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the notes in the chords to create the melody. And there's a term for this. It's actually called guide tone lines. Really helpful and easy way to create melodies from chord progressions and get you started on that. So it's important to know which notes were in each chord, because without that, we won't be able to create the melody lines. So once you've done this, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of the bass notes from our chord progression, because we don't really need those for what we're doing, so we'll just delete those. This should leave you with 3 notes for each chord if you did a triad, or 4 notes for each chord if you did a 4-note chord. Now the next step, and one reason I really like Ableton, and I'm not sure if other DAWs have this feature, is I'm going to select all of the notes and hit 0. Now, this is really cool because what it does is it deletes the notes, like we're not going to hear them, but they are still there and they're showing us where they used to be. And again, this is important. If you can't do this, you're going to have to tab back and forth between your melody track and your chord track to remember where those notes were, or maybe just take a picture on your phone so you have that. But here's what we're going to do. The first step is we're going to make a melody, like I said, using the notes and the chords, and we're going to make it as simple as possible. So we're going to do it as long as the chords are. That's going to be a note. So our first chord, that's this length. We're going to have one of those notes be that length, and I'm just going to pick this one right here, and we'll drag that out. So now that note is enabled. We're going to go to our next chord. We're going to do this and pick that note, and we're going to draw it out. Now it's enabled. I'm going to take this one. Suppose I could just be hitting 0, turn it back on. We'll do that. We'll go back to this chord, turn it on. Now that's going to be that. Now we're going to go down to this one, turn on that one, let's take this one from that one and this one from that one. All right, so now we've created a melody using notes from the chords. Now there are a couple rules that you want to follow with this. When you're just starting out, you only want to use notes that are in the chord. As you progress with this, you can experiment a little more and start using notes out of the chord. But for this, I want you to use the notes in the chord. So as you saw, I was just picking from the notes that were there, turning them on and off, or if you have to write them in anew, that's fine too, but just use the notes that were in that original chord pattern that's being played by the chord device. The second rule is wherever possible, you want to avoid jumps of more than 2.5 steps. So what's a step? A step is 2 semitones. So that's going to be 4 semitones plus 1, so 2.5. So that's 5 semitones, which is 5 notes. So if you jump further than that, what actually happens is it's such a large jump that the melody stops feeling like a melody and starts feeling more like a random sequence of notes. So staying within 2.5 steps is really important. So staying within 5 notes, don't go a further jump than 5 notes, and you'll be good. So for example, I wouldn't want to go from the E4 down to the F3 because that's a lot more notes than 5. That's like 11 notes. So just keep that in mind. All right, now let's hear how this melody sounds with our track. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to change one thing for sure, and that's that I don't like the E to the C, back to the E, and then to the C again. So I'm going to change this C and to the D that we have from that chord. Let's hear that. So now what we're going to do is, instead of using one note per chord, we're going to change it up a little bit and use more than one note on certain chords. So for these whole note chords, I'm actually going to change it up and use 2 notes. So what I'll do is I will cut the first note back in half, and I will enable the second note and cut that in half. And same thing for this one. Let's hear how that sounds. So now what you've done is you've created an A melody and a variation to that melody, like a B melody. If you played them in sequence or one after the other, you have an 8-bar melody from a 4-bar chord progression, which is awesome. Now beyond this, it really is up to you what you do and where you go with it. For example, we can subdivide the individual notes even further and add more changes between the notes in the chords. Now one thing I'll note is I kind of broke one of my rules there. This jump is a little too far, and hopefully you heard it. It doesn't quite sound cohesive. Instead it sounds more of like I said, a random change in notes or a random sequence. So I'm actually going to undo that and fix that up. Honestly, I'm not going to touch this anymore. I think I'm pretty happy with where it is from there. But as you can see, you can do this with any chord progression. The one I used was a little more complicated, but even if you have a 4-chord chord progression or a 10-chord chord progression, it doesn't make a difference. As long as you use the notes in the chords and you can visualize where each chord starts and ends, you're doing great. It's just a matter of choosing which notes to enable, choosing the rhythms and this timing that you want it to turn on and off. And honestly, really, I just recommend trial and error when it comes to that. And then beyond that, just remember the 2 rules. Use the notes in the chord and don't make a jump greater than 5 steps. Well, I hope you found value in that tutorial. I've got a bunch of other tutorials on this channel that I think you should check out if you're new to music production and trying to take your skills to the next level. Now, if you want me to keep making great music production and music and Ableton content, please, I need you to do one thing for me that would really help grow the channel and help the YouTube algorithm know that I'm making good videos. And that is, please do like this video. If you could do that, it would mean the world. It only takes a second. Please do like it. And hey, if you really enjoyed the content, please hit subscribe with the bell notifications on so you don't miss out on my future uploads. Now, anytime I post a new video, the views that I get in that first hour are really crucial to the YouTube algorithm. So please, if you could, hit subscribe with the bell notifications on to stay up to date on my new content coming out. Let me know in the comments what kind of video you'd like to see next. And as always, thank you again for watching. I hope to see you in the next upload. Peace.